Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Joseph, Zeenat, and Tina again, nutritionists, and talking through now part two of our two-part series on digestive health. And so, welcome, ladies.
Hey,
Hi.
Joe. Hi, Zeenat.
Hi, guys.
So I think one of the discussion points, well, we ended off sort of talking through the stomach in the last episode and really focused on stomach up when it came to digestion and digestive health. And now I think there are many other parts to digestive health um, below the stomach or from the stomach down that I think would be good for us to talk through. And one of the sort of catchwords or catchphrases that you always hear when you're thinking about digestive health is leaky gut. And so there's probably misconceptions or probably unknowns. People don't necessarily know what does leaky gut mean. It's just kind of this weird word that maybe there's some weird pictures in behind that word that people can come up with. So let's kind of open up the discussion around leaky gut and what it means and explain it. Tina, you wanna take a crack at that?
Okay, so I'm going to do my best to explain leaky gut. So I think of leaky gut, and the way I explain it is the alphabet in the English language. So we have A, B, C, all the way down to Z. These letters make up words. We have small words, we have medium words, and we have large words. So the English alphabet is the building block to English words and our language. Similarly, if we think about it, the building blocks of life, they're called amino acids. And amino acids, they're organic compounds. They combine together to make and form proteins. Amino acids and proteins are the building block of life. So alphabet, building block to English language, amino acids, building blocks to life.
Okay.
So when we eat protein, they have to be digested and they have to be broken down into structures that can be absorbed by our blood. And then from that, there's an uptake in nutrients. Our body uses these amino acids to make proteins, and that helps our body grow, repair body tissue, absorb nutrients, do tissue repair, and they perform a host of other bodily functions. So amino acids can also be used as a form of energy by our body. There's 9 essential amino acids that we have to get through our diets. So I'm going to give you an example. My kids and I were doing arts and crafts. So I'm going to just take a piece of paper here. I'm going to write down using the English language. I'm going to write down E, G, G. That's egg. Oh, it's backwards for you guys.
No,
We didn't stop. Okay.
It's not a magic mirror, Tina.
Oh, I can't see. Okay.
One other part to mention, proteins play a huge role is hormones in general are composed of proteins.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. That's perfect.
Wrong.
So I wrote down the word egg and the word gluten, for example, because these are proteins. These are proteins that we eat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to talk about lactose as well, but I'm going to do this first because lactose is a little bit special. So this scissor here represents enzymes, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting this into E, G, G, right? And this is what our body is doing. It's cutting down the proteins into little snippets, into little letters like this, so that they can start being absorbed.
And for our audio listeners, Tina is just chopping up the words egg and gluten to make smaller pieces. And obviously it's reflective of the enzymatic process that we talked about enzymes in the previous episode as well, them being important to that digestive process.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe.
No problem.
So the small intestine now is lined with these cells. And these cells are called tight junctions, which is perfect because that's exactly what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be tight together. So when I put out my knuckles like this, each knuckle represents a cell, and they're close together. They're tight enough to not let so many things through, because the job is to let through things like water and nutrients. And that is called intestinal permeability. So when the proteins start breaking down into amino acids like this, then the E comes along and the G comes along, and they can go in and we can start to absorb things, and everything is nice and perfect, and that's how we get our nutrients.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when these really tight junctions begin to loosen up like this? And for those who can't see, I'm loosening up my knuckles. I'm making them into kind of fingers because I don't know how to loosen knuckles. Like, that's weird. But anyway,
you're allowing those larger particles to make their way through the intestinal lining.
So now we have a massive guy like gluten, huge, and these junctions are widened. And so now gluten can slip in and go through, which is a problem. Now, I have a few studies that I've read, and gluten actually is a huge offender. And the reason is because there's a enzyme in gluten. It activates an enzyme called zonulin, and zonulin leads to increased intestinal permeability. And one of the biggest places we find this is in those people who have celiac disease, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that make these junctions apart a little bit are over-the-counter medications such as antacids, NSAIDs. You know, last session we spoke about when there isn't enough hydrochloric acid, how detrimental that is to digestion. And then you go ahead and you put antacids into that, and you've got a bigger issue. This can also create these junctions to start becoming wider and wider. Stress does that as well. Histamine reactions do that as well. So there are reasons why these tight junctions no longer become tight anymore. Now, I said we talk about lactose. Now, lactose is a bit special because the reason why people have lactose intolerance or lactose sensitivity is because of an enzyme called lactase. So the scissor being my enzyme.
Yeah.
So lactase decreases, that enzyme decreases as we get older. And so when people have a lactose sensitivity or intolerance, it's because they really don't have that lactase enzyme that helps cut it down. So once we have these cells loosened up and these larger proteins are going in, we now have undigested food that can go in. We now have bacteria and pathogens that go in. And remember, we talked about this last time as well. The hydrochloric acid is supposed to help kill some of that, but we don't have that anymore. So now that's going in. And now the body starts going through an inflammatory response to protect itself.
Sees them as invaders.
Exactly. Sees them as foreign invaders. And essentially, this is the gateway to allergies, inflammation, slower transit times, malabsorption, parasitic and viral infections. So as this process continues, because we keep assaulting by giving these assaulting foods, the cycle continues. And we have a nice big bowl of hot mess.
Tina, what about, I love the overview. Thank you very much for that. How does, let's say, small intestinal bacteria or SIBO play into that? And, you know, maybe get into a little bit of discussion about populating good gut bacteria and probiotics.
So understanding leaky gut is the foundation to understanding SIBO, because now that we understand that when we don't have an environment filled with hydrochloric acid and the things that we need to kill this bacteria, that's step one. Step two is when it gets into the gut and now we've got an overgrowth. So this can be seen in, things like candida or viruses or skin allergies, and SIBO can be very uncomfortable. And you can go to your doctor and it can be detected. So what can we do? The first thing we can do is we start to heal the gut a little bit so the SIBO can, which is overgrowth, so we can start to balance it. So probiotics are a great addition. Diet has to come first.
Yeah.
So
removing certain things from the diet, like nutritionally poor
removing,
food,
exactly.
pathogens, and
Exactly.
these food allergies that we're talking about.
Exactly. So remove the big offenders. Now, remember, I said gluten is a big one.
Yeah.
Lactose is a big one. And sugars, now they start to feed this bacteria. So now we're in double trouble,
Yeah.
right? Because now you're fighting off the gluten in the bread and you're breaking down the sugar, which is the same with lactose as well. It's broken down into 2 sugars. So we got to cut that food stuff out and give the body and the gut a chance to heal and decrease the inflammation. Once we do that, we can use specific probiotic strains to deal with that. And there's 2 really good ones. One of them is called the bifidobacterium. It's really good to support digestion, and it works on regulating constipation, so making you a little bit more regular. It works in the large intestine. Another one, Lactobacillus acidophilus, so that works in the small intestine. And so depending on where your ailments lie at the time, you can use a combination of those 2 to help get that good bacteria back in the body.
Repopulated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even from a supplementation perspective, if you're in a state of poor digestive health and you want to repopulate, as nutritionists, we always talk about food being the first source of repopulating or first source of nutrient in general. But I think if you're in a bad state of digestive health, you do want to look for some good supplements out there on the market. There's tons. Maybe you want to start at something like 10, 15 billion of these particular bacteria that Tina's talking about. This way you can get your body used to pulling in these probiotics, because it might cause a little bit of digestive upset if you just shoot for, like some really extreme probiotics and work your way up. So maybe it takes you a week or 2 to get used to a small amount of probiotic if you've never taken a probiotic supplement before.
Right.
And then once you do, then you can really amp up the probiotic count. So it's the count of the actual number of bacteria in it. And sometimes in the stores, you'll see 1 trillion, you'll see billions, 50 billion. And so start at like 10, 15, and then move up to maybe a 50. And then once you're populated and once you're on this regimen for a while, and by the way, there are many things that can actually wipe that bacteria out again. So things like antibiotics, if there's any cycle of antibiotics that are happening, if someone's sick, you'll wipe out all that work that you've done, and you again need to go and repopulate that bacteria. So once you are in a sort of repopulated state, maybe after at least a month cycle of probiotic, I would say, to 2 months, depending on how long standing this issue is, then you can start to incorporate the food source of probiotics. Where you have fermented foods, which have great probiotic value in them. And even products like cultured coconut, which is a kefir, on the market, that's food source, so bioavailable, highly absorbable. Definitely something that you want to incorporate into your diet, and you can do that in conjunction with any probiotic supplement as well. One of the other parts of, I think, all this digestive upset is what does that exactly amount to when it comes to bowel movements? How does it end up affecting your daily bowel movements? And is it constipation? Is it diarrhea? Anyone want to comment on that? I know they're dirty subjects. Sorry.
Well, I think that for regularity, like I said, the probiotics are essential, but you really need to focus in on the strain. So if regularity is your issue, then you choose a probiotic that is higher in the bifidobacteria strand.
Yeah, perfect.
And in this case, I want to mention two things. A, it's really important at this point to work with a practitioner, so whether it's at a health food store or if you're going to choose someone, right? And the second thing I want to mention is that there have been several studies that show benefits for combining both bifidobacteria and lactobacillus when it comes to treating inflammatory bowel diseases. But again, it's not Google MD where you're self-treating. So going to like a health food store or working with someone to understand the difference and also to see how you're feeling. But understanding that each strain works in a different part of the intestine. So depending on what the issue is, get some guidance and good direction on how to proceed cautiously and safely.
Perfect. I want to touch on regularity as well, from a lifestyle perspective. In general, if things are sitting in your lower bowels and you're in a constipated state, what that can actually do is allow your body to reabsorb a lot of the toxins that your digestive system wanted out of your body. We talked about pathogens. There's unwanted stuff that certain organs get rid of through your digestive system and kind of dump in there. And that's all supposed to come out and into, the toilet. But if you're backed up, a lot of those toxins meant for excreting out of the body can actually be reabsorbed, which, is very problematic because your body is designed to release toxin and get it out of the body. And in this case, you're bringing it back in. So outside of even probiotic and supplementation and gut healing, even exercise, something as simple as exercise, getting the body moving will literally help the large intestine move stuff through quicker. Moving your body physically, walking, jogging, light exercise. Maybe some people have noticed after exercise, bowel movements tend to be a little bit easier. Yeah. But it really does speed up that process through the tract. And then that means that less water is going to be reabsorbed back into the body as well, because as that digestive food sits in the lower bowel, your body says, okay, I'm going to pull water out of this, and it leads to that constipated cycle. And then you have dry bowel movements and constipation. Also, getting the heart rate up when you're exercising. That's an important part to this as well, because you're increasing the amount of blood flow through these parts of the body. And one of the things that actually moves food, digestive particles through the small intestine, through the lower bowel, is a physiological function called peristalsis, which is through your intestines, it's pushing the food down the digestive tract. And increasing blood flow to those areas will actually increase the squeezing and contraction of those muscles. And again, help move things through your system. Stress, I think, Tina, you had mentioned it as well. Stress is a big topic as well when it comes to inflammation in the body, tight junctions. You were talking about stress can interfere with those things. Zeenat, anything you want to talk about from a stress? Anxiety?
Stress and anxiety, we know, messes with your digestive system and impacts the gut microbiome that Tina was talking about. And like you said, exercise, so really 3 simple ways that you can manage your stress. Have a good support system. Surround yourself with people that will support you and inspire you. That's number 1, it's key. Number 2, like you said, Joey, get regular exercise. Do what works for you. Like I know for me, Kundalini yoga works for me. Nature walks work for me. What works for you that's going to entice you to get out there and move? Because like you said, exercise helps with increasing blood flow to the digestive organs. It tones your muscles in your GI tract. And, really allowing those 6 sphincters to open and close appropriately. And you need that for a good digestive system. And then the third thing is, you've heard this before, right? Get enough sleep, get enough sleep. And all that means is really maybe shutting down technology a couple of hours prior to going to bed. Maybe you might need a magnesium supplement to calm your nerves a little bit. So I think, stress plays a huge part in managing your digestive system. Now, we're also seeing, last week we talked a little bit about dental diseases stemming from clenching our teeth. And that actually impacts your cervical spine and your entire nervous system. And, some people go to the dentist and it's really not just a dental issue when you're clenching your teeth. It's actually a nervous system issue. So understand that when you're in that fight or flight, we've talked about this before, you're in that sympathetic nervous system, your body is not digesting food properly. So you need to move it to the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest system, right? And so how do you get there? Many people are stuck in that sympathetic nervous system. So yoga, meditation, sleep, right? All that is really important to move you from that stress, fight or flight, into the parasympathetic, which is staying relaxed, and it breaks down your food properly. And, I think sometimes we find complicated ways, why is this not working? Why is the digestive system not working? But if you can calm yourself down and not eat on the run, take a moment to sit down and eat your meal, that's going to help a lot in making your digestive system at an optimum level.
Great.
Well said, Zeenat.
Okay, so we talked through food moving through the digestive pathway, and lifestyle, and certain ways of managing and making sure that it makes it out efficiently and your body absorbs those nutrients. But one thing necessarily that we didn't mention yet, but I think should be part of a digestive series, is the liver. Even though the liver is, probably known best for its detoxification functions in the body, which are, in the hundreds, I think the liver is extremely important when it comes to digestive health. One of the, let's say, items related to digestive health in the liver would be the fact that it releases bile. And there's biliary ducts that the liver pushes this bile fluid through, which bile essentially is the formation of, the inclusion of all the toxins that your liver, including even not just toxins, but even cholesterol, that your liver is detoxifying from the body, from the blood, and putting it in this mixture, where we'll get into hydration in a second, because you need some format to excrete this stuff from the body. Again, we were talking about toxins leaving the body. So the liver's capturing these toxins, adding in whatever else the body doesn't want, maybe excess cholesterol in this case. The liver actually makes cholesterol, and depositing that bile that it produces in the gallbladder. And so another important digestive organ is the gallbladder, which is essentially a storage facility for the bile that's made by the liver. And it's there for efficiency, really. That's probably the way I would describe it, because if you don't have a gallbladder, your liver is excreting bile, which one of its main functions is emulsifying fat. When I say emulsifying, I mean breaking down fat. Tina was talking about breaking down proteins. Bile helps to break down, sort of everything that comes through in the small intestine, but it's one of its main functions is emulsifying fat. So if you're constantly releasing bile from the liver and you're not eating fatty meals, maybe your high protein meal at breakfast or whatnot, you're not necessarily being efficient with your bile. So the gallbladder plays a role in storing that bile and understanding when there's fat in the small intestine, and literally through hormones, literally pushing excess bile into the small intestine, the upper area of the small intestine, to start to digest those fats, which fats take a little bit longer to digest than most others. Protein, and of course, takes much longer than carbohydrates to digest. So two very important organs in that process. And I thought it would be worth mentioning. Now, part of that whole bile system, again, we go back into hydration, which is important for constipation and that process of moving through the digestive system, but also it's an important factor in creating bile. What are your latest thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like the liver has so many functions, right? But its main role in the digestive function is like you said, production of bile, which helps break down and emulsify the fat. But people don't realize, like say you're on a high fat or a protein or a keto diet, that you need at least 3/4 liters of water to break down that, one meal of high fat that you're eating. And so people on that kind of diet then get constipated very quickly. They're not hydrated. So really, like you said, hydration is so important. Start with 2 liters of filtered spring water and then bring it up to 3 liters. And then even if you're incorporating insoluble fibers, like, it's the big thing, right? You want chia and flax and all that in your diet, but that does add bulk to your stool and help with the healthy bowel movement. But you do need water or hydration to move that down. So hydration, key, especially when you're doing these kinds of diets.
Yeah, great. Wow, great points. Like, totally want to reiterate that you're increasing all this healthy food in your diet, all the fibrous things that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
A lot of people on the keto diet these days, and high amounts of fat. Basically, I think you're talking 70% of the diet is 77% plus should be some form of fat.
Yeah.
Good fat. And so totally increasing the amount of hydration. You should be doing that. Tina, anything on that?
I think it's really important for people to understand when you undergo any kind of diet change, yes, listen to your body, but make sure your body is ready for it. I think it's really easy to, I don't even want to say gimmicky, but I don't really know how else to put it. It's like nice advertising to lose weight, but you don't want to lose weight and then damage something else. So if you're going to do high fat, and fat is so important, I don't recommend low fat, but make sure your liver can handle it. Like everything that you said, Joe, make sure your liver is healthy. There's lots of ways to do that. You can do castor oil packs on the liver. You can incorporate bitter foods into your liver. You can stop eating by 8 p.m., let's say, and give yourself a break the next day so that your liver can do its job. So I'm advocating for liver health before we jump in and take on a big change and do this new diet. So that's one.
Yeah.
2, in terms of adding to what Zeenat said, which was perfect about hydration and fiber. So one thing about constipation is that constipation is a lack of dietary fiber and water. If the stool is hard and lumpy, that could be a sign of dehydration. If the stool is large or like little rabbit pellets, that could be a sign of not enough fiber or not enough nutrient intake. So be mindful of which it is. And then usually the marker for hydration is anywhere between half a fluid ounce up to 2/3 per pound, depending on your activity level. Of course, if we're coming into summer, so we're going to be a lot more thirsty. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's common sense now that we're going to be drinking more, as opposed to when we're in isolation and I'm Netflix and chilling. I'm not really thirsty, right? So I don't need as much. So if you are feeling constipated, please do not add fiber as your go-to thing right away. It is going to ferment up on top. You need to have a bowel movement, and then you can start adding fibers. Your body's not ready to handle that dietary intake of fiber if you're not drinking water as well.
Exactly.
So you're putting one mess on top of another mess. Oh, that's just what I wanted to add about that.
Yeah, great. I think it's a great overview. And part 2 to our digestive series.
Yeah.
Maybe liver being such an important organ is something that we put on a show in the near future. I think there's tons of things going through my head that I'd love to talk about. So we can put something together for that. But this has been another great conversation.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it was fun being with you guys again. This is episode 3. Hopefully, we do have some listeners out there who are getting some valuable information from these podcasts. So it's been a fun journey so far. Ladies, are we good for the day?
We are good to go.
Yeah.
Zeenat, what about you?
Absolutely. This was great. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Enjoy
We'll see
your
you
day,
all again.
everyone.
Enjoy the
Okay,
day.
bye.
Take care.